Okay, so welcome back to the 13 Roses and the series of interviews we're doing with the teachers of the 13 Roses of sacred sexuality. So we're going to be interviewing the beautiful babe from, I call her the Babylonia from Bermuda, and that's Rhea Gibbons. And Rhea's joining us today to discuss about her journey that she's taken with sacred sexuality. So lovely to have you here, Rhea.
Lovely to be here.
And I'm just going to ask you to just give us a short introduction about who you are, what you do, where you're from, those kinds of things.
Okay, so my name is Rhea, as Colette mentioned, and I am 28 years old. I am currently residing in the island of Bermuda, working as an art therapist and starting a homeschool. And yeah, it's work that I've come back to do to serve my community, because I feel like there's a lot of healing that needs to be done here in terms of issues that sort of snowball into generational traumas, and seeing what I can really offer from an embodied perspective of life experiences, and a space of humility.
Beautiful, gorgeous, yeah. And this isn't the only course you've been in, like you've been a regular like pursuer and seeker of your own soul and healer of your own soul and engaged in many courses that I've offered. You've done obviously work beyond that as well. So I just wanted, to point that out because you are an avid soul searcher who's done quite a lot of work on yourself at the ripe age of 28 as well, which is amazing and groundbreaking. So I just want you to just share with us what actually brought you to do a training on sacred sexuality.
For me, it was feeling how I felt after doing the first 13 Roses session, and all of the changes that I had as a person, dealing with like childhood traumas, dealing with deep rooted things that needed to come out, and how that sort of manifested itself afterwards, from that sort of like fresh space where I had done some healing work, how that changed how I was interrelating with my partner or with my friends, or even how I felt about myself in terms of my worth and where I was going to go in the future, and feeling like, well, actually I can do this. So as much as it's sacred sexuality, I feel like the core woundings we work with have this impact on every aspect of your life. For me, one of the huge things was boundaries, and so being able to say, well, I need this, or and this I'm not going to accept, because I'm not selling myself short, and also seeing the way that, wow, there's this sexual programming that comes at a ripe early age where your hormones have just started firing, but also where there's a lack of guidance. And the more I go back and the more I do this work, it's seeing how these things have been layered on in such a way that I didn't even know.
Yeah.
To do with, I guess, seeing friends behave in a certain way, or you've seen your parents behave in a certain way, but even down to these minute aspects of culture, a song that's played on the radio once, but, once an hour,
Yeah.
and music videos, and this really sort of like pornographic programming that there is in culture, and how that affected me personally, as first as a girl child and then as a young woman, and seeing that play out in my poor boundaries.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Big piece there about, making it sacred. And there's obviously, there can be a lot of projection or misunderstanding about the word sacred. Here we're talking about purifying a field of sexuality that has been deeply tainted by society, darker
Yeah.
forces, whatever you want to call it, and projected on us as women and young girls. And we're trying to clear that. But if somebody is listening to this interview doesn't understand what sacred means, I mean, I've had people saying, oh, so that's like a Christian teaching. I'm like, no. So how would you, your age, being 28, because I would have a different description of it, of
Mm.
course. How would you describe sacred sexuality?
I would describe it as deeply respectful
Yeah.
for yourself. First and foremost, I think it comes from the deepest respect that you can have, and how that deep respect sort of translates into self-worth. So I would say one of the pillars of sacred sexuality is boundaries. That second would be the self-respect and the self-worth, but then also the deep loving for yourself. Um, the deep, deep, deep loving, um, and also the not rushing. Being able to really love on yourself and on your body. And this is even before we get to what it's like, with a partner and how that evolves over time, but just appreciating you as a person, and being able to really use your Shakti in a way where you're not just keeping it to the lower base chakras, but you're invigorating your whole body. You feel it in your breasts, you feel that wave of energy afterwards in your third eye, and you're like, this, wow, really using it to recharge and being God connected. And again, like you were saying, not in the Christian sense of God as a big man with a beard who towers over us, but God is in that interconnectedness of the universe, outside of what that darker programming is that does keep us oppressed. Just the most innocent root of what it means to be a living being.
So how do you find that, working with sacred sexuality still allows you to be like wild and sensual and all the things that, the primordial Shakti or sex should be within our body? But how do you think that's fine-tuned itself in you being sacred? What's it actually become within you now that was different before you did this?
I think before I really did have the tendency to revert to being overtly sexual for attention, from a partner, or to feel validated, or even walking down the street to get attention. And now it's not that, now I can cover up because I feel good to cover up, but for me, it's finding the middle ground. I'm not 65, even if you were 65 and it doesn't, but by that, I mean, I don't have to be matronly. Where I'm focusing on coming in the middle ground. So a good example of that is last week for my birthday, we did a salsa class, me and some of my really good friends, and we explored being in our bodies, and what does that sensuality feel like, and being in a space with all women, and it was really beautiful. And I don't think I would have chosen something like that to start this cycle around the sun off for me if that's not where I was in my personal life. So it's, how can I be in my body, know my body is mine, and that this is my boundary, but also enjoy it and be in my feminine principle, and in a way where I'm not using it to get attention, and I'm not exploiting myself. And I think that in itself, enjoying yourself and enjoying your body is sexy.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I mean, two things there that have really, come out at me is the fact, just listening to you speak as a 28-year-old, if I had the wisdom that you've got now, and and it's not just knowledge. I've seen you in the forum. This is like being embodied by you. You are living by what you've learned by yourself to change and be this deep filled sensual woman who has clear boundaries and loves her sexuality and isn't going to prostitute that out. It's pretty incredible, and that's why, this interview and just sharing that about you and how that can be taught to other girls to own that. It's just pretty phenomenal, and I just want to celebrate you right here now, because that really struck for me. Wow, listen to how she's speaking about sex at her age and about herself and about loving herself. And I think that's key things that you are really good at, Rhea, just like bringing younger girls to that space, because I know your journey. I know you've not always loved yourself. So I
Yeah.
want to highlight that and tell us how that transformation happened.
Well, it didn't happen overnight. And I think the piece kind of just dropped in maybe 2 weeks ago, if I'm being really, really honest, because I think we can say that we love ourselves. Um, and I think we can really want to love ourselves, but then when you look at your actions, you're like, well, no, it's not really self-loving.
Yeah,
Or we use it as like a mantra and we don't delve deeper into what does self-abuse look like.
yeah, yeah,
And I have been really intimate with self-abuse over the years, um, through self-harm and eating disorders and unloving sexual relationships, with men who didn't really care about me, because I also didn't think that I cared about me.
yeah,
So that for me is a deep piece that I'm only just now, as I sit back and I look at things, I'm like, wow, it's been transforming, but it has really meant me being honest with myself. Where did these behaviors stem from? Going all the way back to childhood, making sure I'm feeling all the emotions and I'm not glossing over it. This was the context, but also where's my role to play in this now in taking self-responsibility?
yeah, beautiful.
I think the self-responsibility has been the way to really get there. I know it's something that you push a lot, and I'm really thankful for it. And sometimes it gets my back up because it would be so nice to blame other people, my parents or these guys took advantage of me. But when I start to take responsibility and I say, okay, well, I did this because it was an unconscious behavior that came from, a lot of the times it has gone all the way back to childhood.
Yeah.
But in taking responsibility in the moment, I can decide to change it.
Do you not think there's a lot of power comes from that? I mean, that's what I try and teach. I remember the years of healing work I did on myself, and I was still in projections of blame that I never really got my power back anywhere. It was just so leaking in my victimhood or in
Yeah.
places I wasn't able to see myself. But you are all testimony to me, poking those places. Where were you responsible here? And then you owning it. And I just see this kind of like this taking back of power. How does that feel to actually, like you've said, the resistance part, but like, how does it feel when it actually comes back to you, say, yeah, I did that, so I can change it?
Yeah, it's like, well, damn, okay, this is what Colette was talking about. Okay, yeah, fine. And then you realize that all the kicking and screaming and the tears were actually worth it because it has real life change. Somebody said, for lack of a better term, a fuckboy sends you a text and you're like, you know what? No, I don't need that validation. I don't block. We don't even need to have a conversation. Just moving on, just block, whereas before it would have been a whole conversation, da da da. And that for me has been a really big thing, that in the work I've done with you and the self-responsibility and the other work that I've done, one of my key pieces was finding a loving relationship.
Yeah.
And also mixing that with the perfect relationship. That's so being realistic and being grounded in a relationship, seeing it for what it is, but also coming from a place of deep love where you want to support one another. And that is something that I've always looked for. But it's something that I've had to give myself first. But that I think has been a product of doing a lot of work on myself for a lot of years, especially doing your courses and all the things that you point out to me. And I don't think that I don't think that I would have learned to interrelate properly had it not been for all of the soul work, and it would have been a very lonely and dysfunctional path for a long time. And I think, if I'm being honest, that's what pushed me into this direction. I remember when I first met you, I was coming off the back of a 3-year abusive relationship, and I just couldn't do that anymore. My soul couldn't do that. And I remember one day you just put your hands on my back as I was in a pose. I think I was in Baddha Konasana, and you just touched me, and I just broke down. You know, I was able to move emotion. I was able to feel safe. And
you got me crying now.
No, because if I had never met you, I know I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, I want to just share with the listeners, you know, I had a yoga studio in Lancaster in the UK, and this beautiful, gorgeous, like, girl walked in that was absolutely this golden curly hair and big green eyes, and I was just like, whoa. And I felt her straight away. She was definitely a connection to me, and we've like kept in touch ever since. Like, we call each other soul sister and soul mama because we definitely feel affiliated to each other. But I'm also aware that we're both on a really big healing journey together, so we have like a kinship. We've got the both like want to live in integrity. We both want to change as women. We want to empower women. So we have a very similar drive as well, don't we, Rhea?
Yeah. No, I'm here also crying.
So yeah, I think we recognize each other as women when we, like, you know, we might call it tribe or sisterhood or whatever word you want to call that, but just a kinship, a feeling of a deep connection and love for one another. And you know, she's like my spiritual daughter, the daughter that I never got to have, who's embodying this work for, you know, the daughter I didn't birth. So it's so beautiful and very touching for me to see you rise like you're rising and come into a place of self-love for yourself, because you are so worth loving. Let's just say that. So the one thing that I've seen you transition from is this maiden prostitute. You know, we talk about the archetypal energies and personalities, and the maiden is like the young, eternal maiden. And we know in our society that we don't have ceremonies anymore to pass maidens through to the next chapter, the mother. And I've seen this blossoming now of this maiden prostitute go to the woman. And some women don't like the word mother, you know, we've got that name, but it's also woman lover. And that's been like your graduation, I feel, in this course, that you're becoming this woman lover. And I can't wait to see her kick ass in the world. I really can't. So highlighting that to you, and I've not shared this with you, but you're well aware of the maiden prostitute within you. What's that been like? What's the differences between those two energies that you feel?
One is a searching outside, and it's rather desperate.
Yeah.
So like a clambering, if I were going to give it an action, and from a lack of self-soothing. And the other one feels like 2 feet on the ground, head held high, centered and self-sufficient.
Gorgeous, gorgeous. And that's a key thing, I think, for your, you know, what you hold is that space. And obviously all of this is still work in progress, isn't it? Aren't we
For
all? You
sure.
know, we're
Yes.
not teaching anyone a finished product about anything. We're just trying to reach women to what we've experienced, what we've been through, from a point of like embodiment, that we know what it's like. We're not saying we're fully there, but we have steps that we have moved, that women probably listening to this interview is like, I am in prostitute energy. And I think all women can hold their hands up and say, I have lived in my prostitute archetype for many years. And the maiden is the woman who is dependent on people for love, finances, emotions, all of those things that Rhea's commented on so far in the interview. Just, she was saying, you know, needing gratification or attention or all of those things. And now she's filling those spaces within herself. And you've just so beautifully kind of coined that in a somatic way, in a feeling way. How is that changing your life in, you know, in the real world, that transition?
Well, I had the courage to open my own art therapy practice. I'm currently looking for my own space. And that's been a huge thing for me. I've been working towards that for the last 10 years. But now I've gotten into a space where I can adequately hold space for other people. But that involves doing a lot of foundation work. So making a lot of connections, creating your own business cards, keeping your Instagram updated. And for me, in order to not look outside of myself, I did have to sort of reinforce my masculine principle, that caretaker role, but from the I can be self-sufficient in my business aspect and make my own money. And when that is solid, then I feel safer.
Yes.
So that's been translating really well. That's a work in progress, especially to balance with still being feminine and juicy and making art and being soft. One of the things I love about art therapy is that it is soft. It's not, I sit there and I accompany as somebody makes art, or we make art together, or we play. And so it's finding these two balances within my work life. Yeah.
And that's lovely, I'm going to pick up on another thing. We're going to come back to the art therapy and sacred sexuality, but I just want to say about, the feminine and masculine piece. And we work within our group, the anima and the animus, the feminine and the masculine within us as women, and how the maiden energy finds it very difficult to access her masculine pillar within herself. And this is something you're really working with at the moment, isn't it? Is to anchor into that animus within yourself that gives you the foundational support to do all the things you've just mentioned: set up a business, become whole mother, woman energy. And beautiful, you actually stepping into that. And that is a testimony of the embodiment of the work that we're doing. So I want you to speak on that. There are lots of courses and lots of work out there that doesn't include embodiment. It's all about, knowledge and knowing things. How is the sacred sexuality container allowing you to embody? I mean, I can share this from my point of view because it's my work, but it would be lovely to let people know how this really works, what kind of environment is conducive to actual real transformation. What would you say the key pieces are for real transformation?
Feeling sustained.
Yeah.
So I know that it's not just you in the group that receives what I have to say, it's the whole group. There's so much support and so much love, but also so much humility. And like you were saying, that this is none of us are perfect, that we're all a work in progress, but that some of us have these embodied experiences where we can give feedback on a certain perspective that maybe another person in the group needs help with at that moment. So it's really that love, acceptance and holding one another in honesty. And then the practices themselves, it's not like what people, it's really funny because I was thinking about this yesterday, how when I say I spend a lot of time meditating, people have this idea of transcendence, and emptying the mind. And I was like, I think that's a misnomer, because that's not what my meditation is. My meditation is going in. It's the feminine principle. It's the embodiment. It's that this work that I have to do is that there's sort of these spots around me where there is numbness, and in the numbness, below the numbness, there's feeling that I haven't felt. So if I go into this area, and I'm breathing in the white light, and I'm being connected to this space, and I can bring more conscious awareness there. And in doing that, the emotions that I need to release, I'm going to be able to release and cry them out. And, maybe I'm angry and I need to go stomp my feet for a little bit. And that's, I think, what allows the work to be embodied, because we're not looking for anything outside of ourselves. Even when we experience God, we're experiencing God in the body and through the body. And Yeah. And I think that that's what makes it empowering, because you realize that's you. It's you that's God connected. It's you that decides to make changes. It's you that decides to evolve and do the work as a being.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, the practices themselves involve many layers. I try to put in things that make you sit in stillness and mainly and contemplation, but mainly going into the unconscious mind. They are triggering psychoactive practices that get you to think on material that you've not explored before or gone into in itself. So that's kind of what you were saying about how it goes in the body. You like having an exploration. And I'm the same as you. Like, I'll do 5 minutes just still in breathing meditation in the morning, catching my breath, and then that allows me some stillness to then go into my own applications that I work on the different themes. So let's talk about the part of the group that, I think is the most transformative when I work with my analyst, and I know in my group, is that I seek teachers that are going to pull up stuff that I am not aware of, or that they see. And sometimes, I've worked with teachers that are too scared to say, Colette, that's your shadow. That behaviour is like pretty awful. So that's what I like to bring into my group, is to go into the places you can't see and actually say, no, Rhea, that you're not right there. How does that feel? But what does that do?
It feels horrible. It feels so not nice. I can't. If I can't even explain it somatically, which is rare for me. But there's this, no, I can do that. At first it feels like being a porcupine, like it feels like it's coming out of my back, like it feels like a defense. And then in my heart, there's like a glowing feeling as though it's searing, and it's so painful. In all fairness, sometimes I'll read it and then I will like close the application. but whatever has been said to me in honesty and love lands. So even if I close the application and I go around with my stompy feet for a little bit, it sinks in. For me, there's no way I can avoid it.
Yeah.
There's no. Yeah, I said to myself, man, I wish I could, but I can't. That's not me. And I think also being held in a space where I know that you're willing to be honest with me, even though you know it's going to hurt, but you're doing it out of love. It also makes you want to take responsibility, because in that, I could project all sorts of shit onto you. I could just be horrible. I could backlash and, be like a cornered animal. So it's also in that, you're also preparing yourself for all of the responses that you could receive in me not wanting to let what you're saying land.
And we've seen that, haven't we, in groups where I've said something and that reaction's happened, and that's okay. Like, I understand. And I understand it because I do it. My analyst will say something to me and I'm like, how dare he? How dare he? And then I'm like running around the garden the same. I have a totally somatic response. I feel sick and I go in all the head thing. And then I'm like, okay, sit down, take it.
Yep.
And then it's the biggest transformational piece that I ever get. And now I actually seek that. I have actually had to work really hard to find a teacher who will do that to me really hard. And I know that's the key to transformation for me. If you've got a woman in the group who's acting like a prostitute and you don't somehow finally get to say that in whatever way, because it's different with different people, that she will always act like the prostitute. And it just takes that someone who cares to say, look, that behaviour's really high prostitute and energy, and that's why you're not in fulfilling loving relationships.
No, because you're giving yourself away.
Yeah. So you've been practicing this in the groups. You've been doing this with the women. And how does that feel on the other side as the teacher, to actually provoke these things in people and say, wait up, no?
It was difficult. If I think back to something in specifically a couple weeks ago, I realized that actually there was this huge transference of anger And then there was this counter transference, because then I was angry with this person, and I was like, this witch, like, I'm really here just trying to help you.
Yeah.
And then it was also getting to the point where I sat with myself and I said, you don't have to also take this personally. You're okay to feel that anger, and you can do something with it. And why does this feel angry? And I was like, well, because I'm just trying to help. And I'm doing it from love. And then I also sat and I was like, and I also don't want her to be angry with me, because that wasn't my intention. My intention was just to be honest.
Yes, yeah, mine too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I just want to point that out, because there's so many people that go onto courses without the trigger, and Pema Chowdhury, the Buddhist teacher, talks about this a lot, because she said you ain't got a teacher if they're not making you really angry and making you prickly. You've got someone who's patting your back. You've got a mother. So, we need the mother, but in a growth container, we need the prickly, we need the trigger, don't we? We need the hot, like, no, that's not who I am, so that we can change that. That's a big piece. So, looking at all of this and all the work that you've done and all the challenges you've had and the applications and the realizations, and, it's been a huge journey. What are you going to do with it, Rhea? How are you going to bring this teacher training out into the world in your own flavour?
I would like to start my own 13 Roses container starting in October, and using art as an element to bring more conscious awareness of what's going on in the unconscious. I think that it's not that it does a lot of its own work, but in some ways, it's just honest. You can't edit it the same way you edit words or you think about what you're saying. It comes out as it is. And I think it helps to see places where we've skimmed over before.
Yeah.
So even how that's started to manifest itself in our group is saying, well, what if you tried doing this? And it's a little art exercise, making a mask or making, I think I suggested to Helena, making 2 drawings.
Yeah.
And I think especially when it comes to defense mechanisms, it is a way to get around them. Or even sometimes to honor defense mechanisms, because potentially you're just not there yet, and that's okay. But I feel like it moves things in a way where it becomes a dialogue with yourself, with your inner world, with what's going on that perhaps you're not seeing. And I think it does have a somatic response.
I agree.
So what you can move there, it's as though it could be a further exploration of something that maybe is not coming to the surface right away.
Totally agree. And for me, seeing it in the group, like, and the things that you've mentioned has really been, it's not my forte, but I've seen the power that it holds. And actually, I was thinking of you the other day when my Jungian analysis had asked me to do a mandala for a process that I was in, and Jung used mandalas and drawing as a way of expressing the unconscious mind. And so I just thought, that all just like hit me really hard as to what you were doing and how that art therapy works. And we talk about, like, we can pray, we can move, we can feel, we can emote, and we can do art. And that is another facet, isn't it, to the healing journey. And what you offer with the work you've done doing that in an art therapy way, I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see it. And the women who take that opportunity up are going to be so blessed with you. They really, really are. So when we're looking at a course that you're starting in October, how can people who've been listening to this interview get hold of you?
They can reach out to me on my Instagram.
Yeah.
Which
I can add the links, actually, darling, to this video.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So Instagram, and that's where you mostly operate from.
Yeah, I don't use Facebook, but also email, which I can give to you to put in the link of this as well.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. I suppose as part of the businesswoman piece that I'm coming into, I realized that I need to make a website, and then I was like, oh yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
And what about individual sessions? Would you be open to offering individual sessions in sacred sexuality and art therapy, or maybe some of the things we've discussed in the call, like transforming the prostitute or the maiden?
I think so, definitely. I think individual sessions are good as well because you can really focus on a topic that specifically relates to you or something that you need assistance with. Group work is great because you get to see lots of different facets, and there are things that maybe you didn't realize touched yours, or they made you self-reflect about other things.
Yeah,
But in one-on-ones, you really get that attention to move some important pieces.
yeah. No, too true. So it's been a wonderful course with you in it. Obviously, you bring just like a different energy, unique energy, and obviously the art aspect. And I just want to say thank you for participating, and particularly thank you for doing this interview. I hope that lots of people get in touch with you, especially your generation who are so missing out on this work, that I think you could magnetize into doing some really deep sacred sexual healing. So thank you a lot, Rhea, and obviously people can get in touch with you with all the links that we will add at the end of this interview.
Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome, darling. Bye for now.